John Cutler with WinPure. I'm one of our solutions specialists, and today we're looking at part 5 of our how-to video series for our Clean and Match master data management solution. The last part there was part 4 and how to deduplicate a single set of data. Today is part 5. We're going to be looking at how to merge duplicates. So in part 4, we did look at a very simple kind of a default mechanism to deduplicate a single data set, which again is just, default. It's very simple and uses some default rules to do the deduplication. Today, we're going to look a bit more in detail on how we can use the Clean and Match master data management solution, and more specifically, the merge and survivorship module within the solution here to survive and prioritize, based on source or based on column level details, field level details, or even based on specific values. So we're going to go into that a bit more in depth. Again, this is a big topic, is merge and survivorship. So we're not going to be able to kind of see and discuss all scenarios here. I do encourage you to visit winpure.com for more information. You can contact me or anyone here on the team to have more of a discussion about your specific situation. But let's go ahead and work into this pretty quickly here. On the screen, you can see some of the data that we worked with during part 4. You can see here the example deduplicate single. That was the original input. So you can see kind of the source data within the sheet here. Above that, we had a clean version of this input data, of this source data, which, we used a simple example here just to do some very light kind of cleansing to this data set. I believe we removed leading spaces, trailing spaces, non-printable characters, and maybe some other noise from some of the different fields within the data set here. So again, this is just a clean copy of that source data, so to speak. Above that, you can see match result 1 and match result 1 deduplicated. And again, if you look towards the top here, you can see, and you can kind of segment this by data that has been imported to the system. So in other words, source data. You can look over here for the clean results. So again, this is essentially, in this example, this is a copy of the source data that has now been run through some different cleansing routines. And again, in this case, we did, removing trailing spaces and leading spaces and things like that. We can also move over to match results, where we're going to be able to see the outputs from the system here, from the match processing or the deduplication, so to speak. From match results here, it's worth noting we will see match results and deduplication results. So what we're seeing here are the match results. Let's go ahead and open that up. In the match results, again, these are essentially raw match results. So if you think back to the match configuration step, we start by choosing our sources. We may need to map fields or columns across sources. We also set up some rules to do the matching. In other words, telling the system which fields and which algorithms and which thresholds to use when looking for matching records or duplicate records. The result from that process will be essentially a full set of data. That's all data from all sources, including any columns that we included from the match configuration step. And the output from this match process is also going to include some of our system fields. So if we take a look at the data list that we see on the screen here, you can see our group ID, and anytime the group ID is duplicated, we know that we're looking at matching or duplicate records. So if you look here, it looks like we have the group ID 1, that's a pair of matching or duplicate records. Same thing with group ID 2 and group ID 3. So if you were to follow the line of data over, if you were to follow this row over to the right, you're going to see if you just look at the company name here, these certainly look like duplicates if that's our definition. In other words, matching on company name. I don't believe we used address information or phone number information to do the matching. I think it was very basic company name type of matching here. And if you follow this over, again, these are essentially pairs of duplicate records. Again, our system adds the group ID, our system adds the source name, so we know where the data came from. That helps with data lineage. Our system also adds fields for master record selection. So in other words, is master record. And currently all of this says false, right? So throughout the merge and survivorship, we can set up rules and priorities to programmatically define master records within groups of matching records. The next one over here is selected, and that one's kind of an interesting one. This allows us to set up special handling rules for records that might be of particular interest. That also allows us to remove duplicates from or false positive duplicates from groups of duplicates, kind of one by one that way. And it also allows us just to kind of flag records, again, that might be of specific interest. So we can remove duplicates, we can delete records using that option, and we can also flag records for special handling that way. If you follow this over a little further to the right, we're going to see some scoring there. So again, we do some very granular scoring with the match results. We're going to score the columns and also the match groups or the match definitions. So any set of match results would contain at a minimum 3 scores, but could contain many, many more score fields. And the reason for that is because the user has a lot of flexibility to set up the match groups or the match conditions. So the scoring is scoring each column from each group and then assigning a best score. So if the user is setting up a match configuration with multiple groups, each group potentially with one or multiple conditions or fields within them, then the total number of new fields that our system adds for scoring could be many. There aren't any imposed limitations that way. But again, at a very minimum, you'll see 3 scores, and that's 1 for the column, 1 for the match group or match definition, and then kind of a best score. So that is just in summary, essentially what we're looking here as the kind of the default output from the match configuration step. So again, we're going to start with 1 or maybe multiple sources of data. We may do some mapping of fields across sources. We're going to set up the match definitions or match groups that tells the system how to find matching records or duplicate records. And the output from that is going to be all data, matching records and non-matching records from all sources and all columns of data that the user has defined from within the match configuration. And then again, our system is going to add all of these system fields. Now, using these system fields and using, source level information and column or field level information, or even very value specific information from this data set, we can set up rules and priorities to programmatically define the way that we merge and survive duplicate records or groups of matching records this way. So let's go ahead and cancel out of this. Once more, just want to take a quick look at the default deduplication view. So again, this is a default deduplication view here. Very, very simple. It's just meant to give the user a very simple and a very quick way to deduplicate an output from the match configuration. So here, if you look at the group ID, you'll see that we don't have any duplicate IDs. This information has been deduplicated. If you compare the total number of rows from this data set, which is 177, to the total number of rows from this data set, which is 199, you can see a small difference there. And the small difference just represents the number of duplicates that have now been deleted from that second data set. So let's go ahead and cancel out of this. Let's jump over to merge and survivorship. And what we're going to do here is we're going to work with the kind of the default match output, again, which is going to be all data from all sources, including all columns that were defined within the match configuration step. And using that view, the user can then set up rules and priorities to do the merge and survivorship. And again, we can do this, essentially prioritizing sources of information. So in other words, source one or source two or source three, that might be the ERP, that might be the CRM, that might be your billing system, so on and so forth. We can prioritize based on source, but again, we can also prioritize at the column level and even specific values from within the data set here. So the way that you actually do the merge and survivorship here should really be defined by a strategy, right? You're really going to want to put some thought into the way that you're merging and surviving this data. A very simple approach here might be the one from the match configuration step, where essentially we just tell the system to take groups of duplicate records and to delete duplicates and to keep one surviving master record. That's a very simple approach to this, to this kind of step here within the workflow to master this set of data. But again, we can be much more granular. The system is highly configurable, and it allows us to use very granular source level, column level, and value specific rules or priorities to handle the merge and survivorship this way. So from this merge and survivorship step, we want to go ahead and start by selecting a specific set of data. And beyond that, if you take a look just below the data source selection, and again, we want to make sure we're on this one, we can see again the same view of data where we can see the group ID and we can see that's duplicated, right? So we know we have at least a few groups of pairs of duplicate records or matching records that match on the company name. That's essentially what we know about this data set. You can see the source name, so we know where the data is coming from. Now, in this case, we did part 4, looking at how to deduplicate a single set of data. So there really only is a single source of data within this data set here, right? And again, what we're looking at are we're looking at all records from within this data set. So we imported 199, and we're still looking at 199. We're seeing some duplicates within this data set. Those duplicates are being expressed or described or represented with a duplicate group ID. And if you scroll down here, you'll start to see all of the unique records that do not match, like these here. These are non-matching, unique records that you might even consider to be master type of records at the end of this process. Let's go back up to the top here where we can see all of the matching records. So here again, just to kind of drill into this a little bit more into detail, keeping it still high level, is the user can go through and can manually select master surviving records from this process. But again, working with larger data sets, this isn't usually a practical approach, right? This can be done and the user can modify, let's say, system selections, right? So the user can set this up programmatically using priorities based at the source or column level or value specific priorities and can make some manual changes this way. But you're probably not going to want to go through and manually select one record from all groups of duplicates, right? We're going to want to go ahead and approach this programmatically, which is a much more practical approach, much faster. And again, it's very configurable and very granular. So again, we can make some manual selections. We talked about is selected. We can use this one to remove records from groups. It might be like a false positive match, a false positive duplicate. We can use the is selected selection here. We can use the function. We can delete that record. So if you delete, you can see we can delete all selected records, right? That's one option there. We can also select and mark as not duplicate. That will simply remove this record from group 1, and the system will assign that record a new group ID as a non-matching record. So that record will be left with a very unique group ID. So those are some of the things that we can do this far. And again, we have our scoring. And if you look over to the right here, you can see all of the kind of source data here, all of the data that we imported into the system. Now, again, we can use this data to do the survivorship. We could tell the system to survive the longest address. We could tell the system to not allow blanks when there is some data within a group of matching records. We can tell the system to survive based on the maximum numeric value or the minimum numeric value. So there are a variety of ways to kind of approach this kind of work. And again, the data set itself probably contains some clues or flags or data points that could be very, very useful in setting rules and priorities to handle the survivorship. So I'm going to go through just kind of a quick, a few quick examples here in terms of some of the things that we can do. And again, my suggestion is, get in touch. Let's have a personalized conversation. Let's consult your situation specifically, and we can help you out with the merge and survivorship piece this way. So in this merge and survivorship step here, we're typically going to start by setting a master record. So we're going to set up some rules or priorities to set a master record. So let's go ahead down here at the bottom. Let's use the set master record. And you'll notice here that we can load and save templates of rules. So once you've done this once, you can save those rules and load those rules the next time around. But let's start with the configuration here. So you can see as I expand the window at the top here where it says add rules, essentially I'm allowed to see some additional configurations. Down here at the bottom, this is probably the most common way to select a master record. And that just means setting a rule to select the most populated record, in other words, the record with the most data, from specific sources. So here we can actually choose specific sources. So the inputs to this match configuration, where we're actually matching data, within and across sources, could come from multiple sources. And as we survive specific records from within groups of duplicates, or as we survive specific data points from specific columns, we may want to do that based on source level information. So here's a good example. The ERP contains an ERP ID, and from a group of duplicates, we want to keep one, but we want to make sure to survive all unique IDs from disparate systems. So we might do this multiple times, setting master records. First time to set the master record as the record coming from the ERP to tell the system to survive in ERP ID, for example. And then we might repeat the process, changing the selection to the CRM source of data to survive the CRM ID very specifically, right? So again, there are a variety of different scenarios here. Don't want to go too deep. The most common and very effective, very simple way to select master records would be to select the most populated record, the record containing the most data, and to do that based on a specific source. So we're going to start with this example. And again, the user can actually set this rule once and come back and change the rule and add new rules and priorities to the way that this works. So, again, it's pretty sophisticated stuff, and we're happy to do some hand holding that way. So let's go ahead and just use that as kind of a default. And what you'll see here is you're going to see is that the system is going to choose or select a single master record from each group of duplicates based on the rule that we just used there, which was just, we told the system to select the most populated. In other words, the record with the most data in the most number of fields. So if you look here at is master record, you can now see a single selection for each group of duplicates. So it's very, very simple that way. Again, if I wanted to do something more, let's say at the column or the field level or working with specific values, I could use the add rules. I can choose from columns here. So a quick example is total score, I might tell the system to mark as a master record the record with a total score as maximum. In other words, the record that got the best score. Or I might tell the system to look at a date updated and use the maximum, which tells the system, in the case of a date updated or recently modified or something along those lines, date modified, it tells the system to select the record with the most recent date, right? So there are quite a few operators here that you can use, even a contains option, which gives you quite a bit of flexibility with the way that you might survive these kind of duplicate or matching records. So there's quite a bit of flexibility here. I don't want to go too deep. Let's go ahead and cancel out of that. Again, that's the first step, which is master record selection. The next one here is just updating, overwriting, or even merging. So the merge option is going to be a very simple and a very fast way to deduplicate the data set, to preserve or to survive multiple unique values from within groups of master records, and it can be very effective. I'm going to use it as an example, but I think I'm going to finish with that example. Something more granular is update and overwrite, and that allows the user to select or to survive essentially, or to update and overwrite based on operators such as the most common value, the most popular value, or the value coming from the master record. What this allows the user to do is to set a master record and then to survive specific values from that master record. So again, back to the example of selecting a master record based on a specific source like a CRM or an ERP, the user can then survive specific data points, telling the system to survive, let's say the ERP ID, again, using the operator from the master record. So in other words, it's a two-part operation. The user starts by telling the system to select master records from a specific source like the ERP, and then to survive specific data points from the master record, right? And again, this does allow kind of for rainfall processing, where I can set a master record, survive specific data points from that master record, and then I can reset the rules to set another master record and survive specific data points from that other master record. And then the output can be any other master record before doing the actual deduplication, right? So there are a variety of potential approaches this way. Let's go ahead and see if we can find a quick example here. Let's tell the system, let's use this one. This is an interesting example. Maybe we know that in some cases, and let's just assume that we set a master record based on having multiple names in a contact field, or based on having kind of the longest value in a contact name field. And ultimately, we want to keep the record up top here, and we're going to delete this record down below, but we do want to survive the two contact names this way. So what we can do in this example is we can do an overwrite. And if you look here, if you follow this record down below, that one comes from what is currently selected as the master record. So what I can do, this is just a simple example here, I can tell the system to overwrite in the contact name field from the master record. And then later I can tell the system to keep this one and delete this one. But what I'm able to do here is to overwrite the name. That way I'm preserving, or I'm surviving the information that I need to here. So in this case, I'm going to do a quick update and overwrite. If you look here, we have column names. We have kind of a bulk option here across all fields. Update only empty values, just update only, no overwrite, or field by field here, I can actually perform an overwrite. What I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to use the contact name field, and let's click out of that. And I'm going to tell it to pull from the master record. So again, I mentioned from either the most popular value or from the master record. So in this example, I'm going to survive, or overwrite rather, the contact name from the master record. And then again, I'm going to uncheck here because I don't want it to update only empty values. I actually want it to overwrite the existing name in the duplicate record. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at the result that way. Let's come over here. You can see we survived that name there, or those two names from that field. And then what I can do here is I can actually switch the master record selection, and I can do that manually, or I can do that programmatically, again, by setting another rule this way. And that way, when I remove duplicates, if we assume this is the one that I want to delete as a duplicate, when I remove duplicates and I keep only the master records, I'm able to do that keeping the information that I need here. So I don't want to go too much deeper into this specific topic. I do recommend that you get in touch if you'd like to discuss this in more detail. This is, one of those topics that is very, sophisticated. It's very advanced, and this is where we do most of our training. So again, my name is Ben Cutler. I'm one of our solution specialists here at WinPure. I've been mastering data since 2015. I appreciate your time today. For more information, please visit us at winpure.com. And this is part 5 of our how-to video series on our clean and match master data management solution, how to merge duplicate records. So I hope this was helpful, and hope to see you next time. Thank you.